I know that it's become trendy to hate on these sort of romance films, but hear me out. This one actually did some things and made some choices that I liked.
You don't feel the same way I do. I'll stop.
Hello, romance girlies. I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel, I talk about entertainment media. Following up on my video about the source material, which is the book, Rule, and then a spoiler-free review of the film itself, I'm circling back to do a spoiler review now that we have reached the week of the VOD release. Marked Men, Rule, and Shaw will be released on VOD this Friday, February 28th. For anyone watching this video that somehow missed my previous videos, feel free to watch those first, since I might be elaborating on some of the information I already discussed first in either one or both of those. But to anyone uninitiated, here is a brief overview of what Marked Men is all about. In this first romance, we follow the love story of Rule Archer and Shaw Landon. They've known each other since high school, but now Shaw is a university student and he works as a professional tattoo artist. He's a couple of years older than her, he has an older brother named Rome, and he also had a twin brother named Remy who passed away before most of the story takes place. In the book, you read some flashbacks about Remy, but the film adaptation doesn't show any of those flashbacks. Shaw has been in love with Rule for as long as she's known him, but he's a bit slower to pick up on that, until she has a birthday and feels particularly emboldened to finally let her feelings out and seduce Rule, which he's more than happy to go along with. They strike up a relationship, and depending on which version of the story you're following along with, the book or the film adaptation, there are other factors that come into play with their ability to carry on with having a successful romantic relationship. Rule has trauma from the death of Remy, his relationship with his parents is strained, Shaw is being pestered by her entitled rich ex-boyfriend Gabe, and she also has a difficult relationship with her parents, although the film adaptation doesn't ever show her father, they only focus on her mother. To the surprise of no one, Rule and Shaw do end up together in the end, despite these various obstacles. It's the romance genre. We're not here to do something insufferably pretentious where, oh, well, they don't actually end up together. No. We're here to see them make up and reaffirm their love for one another before the credits roll. If you followed along with my coverage of this film, you will already know that this film is from Voltage Pictures, which is the same company behind things like the After films and the beautiful Disaster duology. Films that are not particularly what I call good. Compared to that standard, Marked Men is a significant improvement. There's still room for improvement, of course, but in theory, I like the idea of there being more studios and production companies out there building their own momentum and finding success, because while I don't like the way corporate monopolies have been escalating across many industries, but at least for today, we're talking about films. So even within the context of the entertainment industry and of film and television production, these monopolies present a huge problem. There's loads of ethical issues with monopolies, but even in regards to just the quality of the art that reaches the audience, monopolies are only a bad thing. Now, I'm mentioning this because I think it's important for you, the viewer, to understand my perspective in how I went about judging this film. I am very aware of the fact that it's popular on platforms like YouTube to make, well, I suppose you could call them roast reviews of films like the After series or the beautiful Disaster duology, and in doing a quick skim of the early response to the Marked Men film on Letterboxd, the response hasn't been what I call glowing. By the way, don't forget to follow me on Letterboxd. I've been cutting down on the amount of social media that I'm actively posting on, but Letterboxd is definitely one of the few that I am still regularly using. What I wasn't aware of in my earlier coverage of Marked Men is that more than one character that's introduced in the first book gets to go on and be one of the lead characters of their own love story in other books in the Marked Men series. I hadn't read or even looked at the titles of the other books in that series, but as it turns out, Jet and Ayden are the second love story in this series, and Rome and Cora are the third love story in this series. If you watched my spoiler-free review of this film, you will know that I had glowing feedback for Jet and Ayden. I wanted to see more of them because while Rule and Shaw were having their melodrama, Jet and Ayden were serving me meet cute, longing looks, all that good fun stuff that I like to see for a couple in a love story. Now at this point, I definitely want Marked Men, Rule, and Shaw to be successful because if Jet and Ayden are next up, then yes, I would like to see them have their own movie. Rome and Cora's eventual romantic situation gets briefly hinted at in this film. Cora is the manager of the tattoo shop Rule works at, and Rome is Rule's older brother, and at the end of this film, when they're having some sort of large celebratory party or social gathering. I forget what the occasion was. I don't think they actually specified. But you see Rome holding on to Cora as if he's her boyfriend. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it was giving boyfriend energy. I much prefer the idea of continuing on in a film series where you get to see different love stories instead of trying to force non-plot onto just one couple and forcibly monopolize their time as actors to keep making these low-budget romance films. This way, you could at least give different actors their own opportunity to tell a hopefully compelling love story, develop that chemistry with their on-screen partner, and offer the audience that's interested in romance more of a variety of love stories to watch.
Who's this Make-A-Wish, George Clooney?
Yeah, we're kind of busy right now, pal.
Let me buy you a drink.
But now, the bulk of this review will of course focus on Rule and Shaw, their love story, as well as their respective material as characters. Marked Men was directed by Nick Cassavetes, who is a renowned director. This is not some inexperienced newcomer who doesn't know what he's doing. My personal favorite among his credits, John Q. That movie is a banger. But as far as romantic storytelling goes, he is of course best known for directing The Notebook. By the way, a bit of trivia for anyone who wasn't already aware of this, older Allie in that film is played by Gina Rowlands, who is Nick Cassavetes' mother. Nick's knowledge of how to showcase and capture romance on film is very apparent in the details of certain key romantic moments between Rule and Shaw. To give a couple examples of this, the entire sequence of them just playing and frolicking together in the snow, adorable. Full points. That was actually the part of the film where I thought, ooh, well, maybe I might score this film higher than 3 stars. But then we got more of the melodrama kicking in, which was of a flavor that I tend to be especially picky about when it's messing with my romantic vibes. It can be a bit Marmite. I'll explain more of that in a bit, but let me finish my points about the romantic vibes that were exactly what I wanted to see. After Rule and Shaw hook up for the first time on her birthday, and he decides to go see her and try to start something up that's more substantial between them, just the way that the camera shows Rule and the way that he's smiling at her as if he can't help himself, he's just genuinely happy to see her, and something more romantic is blossoming in him. I love seeing stuff like that. Now, it might seem like something very obvious to point out. Well, of course, you should show that the characters have this love story and that they're in love with one another, show that they have those feelings. But here's the thing, not every director knows how to show this. Not every director is knowledgeable about how to do effective storytelling visually if romance is a genre they're not as familiar with. I will give an example of this. One of the films I recently reviewed is an action comedy called Love Hurts, starring Ki Kwan. That film was seemingly attempting to have a romantic subplot between Ki Kwan's character and Ariana DeBose's character, but their romance was not convincing because at no point did they do these things that you need to do to show a romantic connection between them. You need to include those lingering shots of them just looking at one another adoringly. That's integral to romantic storytelling in film. That film's director was someone whose background and expertise is in action, and that was very evident in the final result. The action was much more convincing and presented well compared to what needed to be presented to make the main character's romantic storyline believable. But circling back to Marked Men, I want to go through the plot sequentially and hone in on miscellaneous things so that you can get a deeper understanding of which parts of this film worked for me and which parts were narrative decisions that I did not agree with. So the film opens with introducing Rule at the tattoo shop, his friends who are also his co-workers at this tattoo shop. They all go out for drinks after work, and he meets a girl with whom he hooks up. The actress who plays her is not particularly convincing in conveying negative emotions, which got a bit distracting at times, but part of the point of showing this hookup is that they're establishing him as living a fairly superficial life of promiscuity and hedonism. In the book, they're much more clear about explaining that Rule uses promiscuity and excessive drinking as an escape, as well as a coping mechanism because of a lot of his unresolved grief and trauma over losing his twin brother Remy. In the film, though, they change this characterization somewhat where it's at least partially presented as something he just likes to do, and that part of his reservations in fully embracing a real and meaningful romantic relationship with Shaw is that he just likes messing around with random women. Now, if that was merely the characterization of someone in a different film, perhaps outside of the romance genre, and not targeting a romance-loving audience, I don't think I would care as much, but it's a very weird choice that I find to be rather distasteful within this premise, because it majorly disrupts my emotional investment in their love story, and is one of the main reasons explains why I feel less inclined to revisit this film overall compared to other romance stories that I do love and regularly revisit. If romance girlies are watching a love story between a man and a woman, it's significantly more appealing when that man adores the woman. He's smitten. Think Gomez and Morticia Addams. Gomez Addams is the blueprint.
I would die for her. I would kill for her. Either way, what bliss.
But the morning after this hookup, Shaw arrives to pick up Rule and bring him to Sunday family dinner with the Archer family. And the look of the Archer home worked really well for me. You have this cool toned color grading. It's very gloomy and effective in showing how the loss of Remy is still weighing very heavily on this family. That being said, I think the loss of Remy would have been much more effective in the overall story if they had included some flashbacks. Remy and Rule were twins, so you can have Chase Stokes play him and have more conversations take place specifically between Rule and Shaw about Remy and how they both feel about having lost him. In the book, they go into a lot more detail about Remy's relationship with these characters and how he and Shaw were best friends and why Remy befriended her in the first place. There's a whole other part of that subplot where Remy was actually gay, but Rule didn't know about that, and he and Rome get really upset when they find out. It's a horrible scene in my opinion. You can watch my video on the book if you want to know more specifics about that source material. But Marked Men is only about an hour and a half long, and that seems unusually short. There are certain things that the film would have benefited from, even if they had just extended the runtime to something like an hour and 45 minutes. Things like fleshing out more of who Remy was to both Rule and Shaw. That would have given the story and their relationship more dimension. But when Rule and Shaw come over and they see Rome, Rule and Rome have convincing brotherly chemistry, and also the way that Rome and Shaw interact, they feel like family as well, which makes sense because even though the film didn't really explain this as much as maybe they could or should have, Shaw is very much embraced by the Archer family as being part of their family. The family dinner does not go well. A lot of old wounds that have done nothing but fester, they just flare up. Rule's father is nitpicking his appearance. They don't really explain this in the film as much as they did in the book. His appearance is a lot more over the top in the book. He constantly changes his hair and he has a lot more piercings than how they presented him in the film. I would have liked for them to explain the matter of his appearance a bit more, even a consolidated version of what was in the book. In the book, Shaw talks to someone, I think it was Cora, but if it wasn't her, it was Ayden. And she's talking about how when Rule first began to make these alterations to his appearance, she began to find him even more attractive, specifically because it felt like he was really coming into his own and becoming more secure and confident in his identity and being able to authentically express himself as an individual. I find that to be a really sweet and romantic sentiment. The film would have benefited from including something like that. I know that some things are going to be cut in the adaptation process because that's just a natural part of transferring material from print to film. Information is communicated differently, and some things that work fine in print can come across as disruptive to a story's overall pacing when you put it on film if you don't make some alterations in that adaptation process. But still, I'm just pointing out some of my opinions. Even if they hadn't done everything the way I'm expressing a preference for in this video, if they had even altered a couple of things the way that I would have preferred them, it probably would have resulted in a boost in how I scored it overall. So the Archer family argument happens and Rule storms out and Shaw picks him up so that he's not making this long walk in the cold. While they're talking about what happened at this awkward family dinner, Shaw tells Rule things like, you run away, anytime someone tries to get close, you change direction. This is one of those moments that in hindsight feels a bit like telling instead of showing, although it is an accurate description of how Rule behaves in his more immature moments in the film. I think the audience would have better felt this characterization to be true if they had done more to flesh out the loss of Remy and what Remy's relationship was with both Rule and Shaw. Because the film's runtime is so short and there's so many elements they're trying to cram into just 90 minutes, it does come across as being a bit all over the place at times. Shaw's mother is a materialistic mess and she's pushing Shaw towards Gabe, who is pushy and violent, and Rule is in the trenches of all the trauma from losing Remy, and all of that while Rule and Shaw are trying to embark on this new romantic evolution of their relationship. It's just a lot of things going on with not a lot of runtime to do them justice. One key bit of context that I wish they had clarified in the film is that both Rule and Shaw are supposed to be in their early 20s. In real life, Chase Stokes is in his 30s, and some of the more immature ways that he behaves, the way that he fails to make the better, more responsible decisions about how to deal with his feelings or his lack of regard for the feelings of others, if you put that in the context of him being a character in his early 20s, for me that does make a difference. In the book, he's supposed to be around 23, so he's right on the cusp where if he was even just a couple of years older, I would have said, nope, inexcusable behavior. I'm washing my hands of you. I don't care if you don't get the girl by the time the credits roll because you are too grown to be acting like that. Now, I know, because I read the book, what his age is supposed to be, but that would have taken, 5 seconds to explain, and it's odd that you didn't make that clear when your actors playing these characters are a solid decade apart in real life. So when Rule finds out Shaw is working at the bar where he and his friends go to get drinks, and he starts to realize he has some feelings for her, he begins to give Gabe an attitude when he's being pushy towards Shaw. Now, the reaction was kind of a lot, but me knowing what I know about what type of person Gabe is in both the book and the film, yeah, I don't care that Rule was being particularly aggressive towards him.
Who's this snake who wished George Clooney?
Yeah, we're kind of busy right now, pal.
Let me buy you a drink.
In other situations, maybe that behavior would constitute a red flag. But Gabe is already being a red flag, and being a red flag towards a red flag is just being correct. Sorry, get him again. Get him for me. Oh, and a quick side tangent. Why do Gabe and Shaw in the film look like siblings? Gabe, you're a weirdo. Why are you so fixated on trying to date a girl who already said she's done and no longer interested, and she looks like she could be your sister? And even later on in the film, after Rule and Shaw are on the outs, so Shaw has got him back together with Gabe, the two of them go out to brunch with Shaw's mother, and Gabe is sitting next to Shaw's mother, and she looks like she's Gabe's mother. It's weird. But anyway, it's not all caveman behavior on this night out, because this is when we get Jet and Ayden meeting each other for the first time. And he's being so cute and interested in her, serving me some rom-com energy. Just give them their own movie. If they greenlight that movie, I will read that book. We'll do that. We'll give it its own video. Let them have their own movie. Now, while the cavemen are over there beating on their chests and getting into a tussle in front of Shaw, Jet just wants to play a little song and make eyes at a pretty girl, and that's the energy I'm here for. And by the way, Ella Balinska, she has it. Every time she's in a scene with Shaw and they're talking about something, it's usually Rule. Ella is stealing the scene. And why is that? Because she has it. Give her her own movie with Jet. Because what happens when Ayden brings Shaw to the club for her birthday? Oh, look who's in the DJ booth. It's Jet. And now they're making eyes at each other. And he's going to invite her into his DJ booth. Let's hang out. Let's be cute together. Stop it. Just give them their own movie. And you know, they get a bit frisky with one another at this club, but because sadly this is not their movie, we have to say goodbye to them and circle back to the story of Rule and Shaw. No offense to Rule and Shaw. They do have their moments and we will get to them, but I just want to give my full support to a Jet and Ayden movie with Ella Balinska and Evan Mock, because those two understood the assignment, and in my opinion, they earned their movie, so let me see it. But it's Shaw's birthday, and she runs into Rule at the club, and he offers to walk her home, and she wants to get that birthday gift. So they leave together, and the scene of them walking home and just being cute and soft and romantic in the snow, this was a genuinely excellent romantic scene for the two of them. I believed their chemistry. When you don't even need to say anything significant to one another, you can just enjoy each other's company and be silly together. Oh, that's romance. Also, this is when he starts calling her Snowflake, which is something she gets tattooed on her at the end of the movie. I, for one, fully support romance girlies reclaiming Snowflake as something cute and romantic. Steal that word back, and all the words, as a matter of fact, from weirdos that try to twist words into something insidious. So these two stop by the tattoo shop, and his apartment with Nash is right above the tattoo shop. This is when she seduces him, and I'll just reiterate something I already talked about in my spoiler-free review. I like that in this moment, she's the one going after him. It's a refreshing subversion of the usual dynamic you see play out between the inexperienced woman and the, well, how would we describe these men?
You know, the whole of Charm School.
So they hook up, and Shaw leaves the next morning without talking to Rule first. She goes home and talks with Ayden about her fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities, about whether or not Rule will really want to be with her. Meanwhile, Rule shares a sliver of how he's feeling with Cora, whom he's tattooing at the shop. And he says to her, "When Remy died, half of me died with him, and I just knew I would never be happy again." That's a good line. Strong writing. It reveals a lot of insight into who Rule is and what he's going through, which, by extension, is going to impact how he behaves in embarking on this relationship with Shaw, which we're about to watch. But I really wish that more of that would have been discussed and developed further in scenes with Shaw. Let them talk about that. Shaw and Remy were best friends. Now, you might not know that if you only watched the film. He goes to see Shaw and they have a conversation about their relationship, which he's nervous about putting labels on, such as boyfriend and girlfriend, but they do agree on being exclusive. And that's important for you to know once he starts engaging in nefarious tomfoolery further into the story.
You're nuts!
So then we watch a montage of them hooking up quite a bit, but also doing the more soft and sweet couple activities like ice skating, taking pictures together in a photo booth, and just all around they're being cute. But at the tattoo shop, Rule is very publicly propositioned by this girl named Sierra, and when he tells her he wants to put a rain check on it, red flag, say no. What do you mean a rain check? You want me to believe that you're a compelling romantic lead when you've got one foot in your love story with Shaw and you're trying to stick your toes in someone else's pool? I ought to throw you in a landfill if you want to be trash, Rule. Ugh. And the other thing that really bothered me about this scene is that when he says the line about a rain check, all his friends / co-workers start berating him to go ahead and hook up with her. So what does that mean? Do they not know that you're involved with someone already? So you're not talking about Shaw because she's not important enough to talk about with your friends. Okay, so you're trash. To the landfill you go. Or do they know and they're still telling you to hook up with some random girl? So your friends are trash. Are you trash or your friends are trash? Let me know. Either way, I hate this. And now I don't even care that your friend's going to die. This is a spoiler review, by the way, if you didn't read the title. Don't get upset that I'm telling you everything that's in this movie. So yeah, his friend's going to die. And do I care? No. Let's just fast forward to Jet and Ayden's movie because I'm about to leave.
You're seriously just making it worse. And I want to go home.
You can't.
Cut to Rule and Shaw hanging out together, and they're talking about art. He's being rather silly by wearing her bra on his head, which I love. It's cute, domestic, intimate, I approve. However, I would have liked to see more of that, which maybe you could have done if you'd extended your film's runtime instead of speed running through everything that you put in here. Because they're going to now go to Shaw's mother's Christmas party together as a couple, and her mother is still trying to get her to reconcile with Gabe. It's annoying to watch, but they toned it down a lot from the book, so it made it much more bearable to watch in comparison. If you haven't read the book though, you might just outright despise Shaw's mother for being the worst, and listen, that's fine. I'm not going to waste my breath trying to defend her, but as far as adaptation goes, I like the way that they modified her material, because Shaw's parents in the book, ooh, I need them under the jail, next to Gabe. Worm food. But Rule was supposed to help his friend Jasper while he was doing this dangerous painting thing on a really high part of a building, but Jasper did it by himself and he fell and injured himself, and later in the film he dies from this accident. And I don't care. I completely disagree with this narrative choice because they use this whole Jasper thing to try to stir up the old wounds of Rule losing Remy, but you could have just stayed focused on Remy the entire time. You didn't need to do all of this. I fully believe you could have made this story work without Jasper's death. Remy's already the death we need to be focusing on. So at Jasper's funeral, Rule is there. He's distraught from experiencing yet another death, and Shaw is also in attendance with Gabe because they're back together at this point. Oh wait, I didn't explain everything. So when Rule and Shaw were coming home from the Christmas party, that's when he got the call about what happened to Jasper. And he's so upset that he picks a fight with Shaw, he lashes out at her. We have some time jumps and some voicemails from him communicating what I had thought was him breaking up with her, but Shaw is under the impression that they're on a break. I know, the communication skills are abysmal, clearly. And then while he's moping about ruining things with Shaw, Sierra shows up, and apparently he's not moping hard enough because he just immediately hooks up with her. And I absolutely despise this choice. He did not hook up with someone else in the book. A girl kissed him once and he wasn't into it, so he stopped her from doing anything else. There was never any question about how much he desired to be with Shaw once they started to get going with one another. So you changing the characterization of Rule so that he genuinely enjoys being a bit of an F-boy, I don't love that. That's not romantic. Because then you're going to put the audience in a position of arguing amongst one another about semantics and what level of severity this transgression is. To me, this is tantamount to cheating, which sours my enjoyment of their romance. When things are good between them, they're genuinely cute and very convincing. I'm invested in their love story. That scene in the snow, absolutely. Fully holds its own as romantic storytelling on the film medium. And now where are we? We're in the landfill, and I don't want to be here. But here's the thing about a funeral. It really puts things into perspective. So, both Rule and Shaw seem to be putting two and two together, that their fight was extremely juvenile and pointless, and that when all is said and done, they would rather be with one another. So Shaw goes back to Gabe's place and goes into the bathroom, and she calls Rule and leaves him a voicemail saying that she misses him, and that if he needs anything, if he needs to talk, that he should reach out to her. Once Rule sees this voicemail, he immediately tells Sierra that she needs to go. He says this to her while he's in bed with her, and she's plastered to his back. Why were you continuing to hook up with her specifically? See, all of this does not sit right with my spirit. If he had been hooking up with an array of people, it still would have been off-putting to me, but it would have put me off less than continually hooking up with the girl that you were seemingly interested in, even when you hadn't gone on your break that wasn't really a break with Shaw. This is not how you appeal to romance girlies. This is not romantic. Anyway, Gabe overhears her leaving the voicemail, which is what leads to their argument where he hits her and she breaks up with him for good this time. We hate him. He should be worm food. When Rule comes over and sees the bruise on Shaw's face, he goes to Gabe's place of work and tries to attack him, but Gabe very easily beats him in this fight. I don't love that, but after Rome picks up Rule from the police station and finds out what Gabe did, he goes and beats up Gabe in a car park. I mean, did I enjoy watching that? Yes, absolutely. I also think you didn't do enough. I needed you to go full Art the Clown on him. John Kramer him. You went too easy on him, but hey, we cannot get everything we want now, can we? Now, I haven't said much about Rule and Shaw's relationship arcs with their parents. If you would like to follow that material and investigate that further, I would just say to watch the film. I'm focusing first and foremost on the romance because I do not want to post an hour-long review of this film. I'm hoping that I will be able to cap this somewhere around half an hour when I put the final cut together. So Rule does a grand romantic gesture of painting a giant mural of Shaw on the side of a building. I don't mind that. If a grand romantic gesture isn't overly pushy and imposing on a woman's boundaries, I think that they can be cute. And this one was nice. He's an artist, so when he's clearly been struggling to express himself with his words, we see him trying to make some progress by speaking through his art. That makes sense to me. It also moves the needle towards them finally being able to have a real conversation to talk through the issues that they've been having, and this is the real make or break moment. And I hate to say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous, but Rule kind of won me back over with this final speech that he gives, for a couple of reasons. So he and Shaw sit down to talk, and he fully owns up to his bad decisions. He says that he knew he shouldn't have hooked up with anyone else, and that their break didn't really mean a break, that he wasn't fully ready to commit to her, and he was the one to sabotage their relationship. He was scared to really feel things and commit all the way, but now he's ready. Now he knows he needs to change, he needs to get better at talking about his feelings and stop running away. He's ready to fully commit to Shaw and make promises. And he says a line that's similar to what he says in the book about giving her his heart. And honestly, owning up to what he did wrong, that was very important. But the main reason why this scene works for me as well as it does is simply because Chase Stokes is that good and convincing in his delivery of this speech. When I did my coverage of Uglies, first the book and then the film adaptation, I really felt that he gave one of the best performances of the lot. He put so much nuance and dimension into his character that you really got the sense of a lot of the layers that may or may not have actually been present in the script on its own. But he was able to infuse that into his performance. And then for the final speech in Marked Men, he just has this certain je ne sais quoi about him. There are just some men who are particularly convincing in delivering emotional vulnerability on screen. Some of the most famous trailblazers of that concept are actors like James Dean or River Phoenix. Now let me be very clear, I am not saying that Chase Stokes in Marked Men is on the level of James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause or River Phoenix in My Own Private Idaho. I am simply saying that Chase Stokes stands out for his ability to play this type of emotional vulnerability and honesty in a way that has a lot of potential to go very far, depending on the types of projects and roles he's able to book in the future. If you gave his speech to a different actor who had to say the exact same lines as him, I don't believe the dialogue is strong enough on its own to make this ending work the way that it does when it's Chase Stokes saying the speech. So Rule and Shaw get back together, we see a big party of them with their friends at the tattoo shop, and we get a time jump of 1 year later when Shaw is moving in with Rule, and when they say that, oh, well, it's too bad that Ayden doesn't have a roommate anymore. Guess who's there to say, oh no, she's good. She found a roommate. Me. Jet. The movie ends with them. And if that isn't a setup to them getting their own movie, I will be throwing my shoe.
Yeah, it's called flirting, you idiot.
So to recap some of my key points of feedback, my main points of critique are as follows. The runtime needed to be longer, whether to a 1 hour 45 or a full 2 hours. Many details would have been better fleshed out if they had extended the runtime and used those minutes accordingly. Focusing more on Remy's death and what he meant particularly to Rule and Shaw would have been a much better way to have them bond, further their emotional connection, and flesh out our understanding of their history with one another, things like that. You didn't need a whole other side character to die that we don't care about, just focus on Remy. And then for the positives, I actually found Rule and Shaw's chemistry very convincing. Chase Stokes and Sydney Taylor worked really well with one another as scene partners. They brought a much more convincing emotional depth to their performances and the way that they worked together that I did not get from the other more infamous romance films from Voltage Pictures. The snow scene was a real highlight, as I've already mentioned, as well as the reconciliation scene. Just give an extra round of applause for Chase because he did a lot of work to bring me back in. And an enormous honorable mention, of course, goes to Ayden and Jet. Just give them their movie. You insist on making 100 after films, but you have a chance to give us a cute romance film, a genuinely cute one. It would also be your only one with people of color as the leads, but it's really the chemistry that hooked me. Get Ella Balinska and Evan Mock on the phone because we need to see it.